Hello and welcome back to The Drag Detective, where today we're going to be kind of dissecting and talking about some controversial things that have happened on the show recently involving Michelle giving critiques to some of the queens who have a bit more of an experimental makeup. And there's a lot of opinions of people who do drag, who don't do drag, who care, who don't care, who agree, who disagree. And today I'm just going to give the oral history of queens being asked to change things about their drag, whether it be their makeup, whether it be their presentation, whether it be their aesthetic, and how consistent is it really? And then we're going to talk to a couple of my drag friends who are known for their outside of the box makeup looks and get their opinions from someone who is out there in the real world doing drag, and how do they feel about the queens getting critiqued like this on the show. So very excited to interview some of my friends, very excited to give some different perspectives that are outside of mine for this video, and let's get into it. Now, as for casting queens that are a little bit outside of the norm, because I mean, we know at this point, Drag Race likes and probably will always stick to men dressing like women being like the crux of the show. You know, they've dived into casting AFAB women like Victoria Scone. They have now pretty regularly been casting trans women and trans men, but I feel like the show at its core will always be about men dressing as women. Luckily, we do have trans representation, things like that, but I just feel like the show will never fully open up the floodgates to all the different expressions and types of drag out there, because it's easy to digest man dresses as woman for a popular audience, which sucks because we've seen shows like Dragula who have really shown that all types of drag and all forms of drag can thrive and succeed in a competitive setting together. Kings like Landon Cider and Throb Zombie have done extremely well next to queens and next to monsters and next to things and next to all the different types of drag that are out there. And I know people get annoyed when I plug my show, but I'm gonna plug my show. On Drag Duel, we accept all forms of drag. We just had a king win season 2. And in the top 3, there was an alt queen, there was a drag thing, a drag clown, and there was a drag king. And they were all killing the competition. They all made it to the end, and the king won. So the whole, like, I don't know if kings can fit in. I don't know if whatever would fit. It would work. It would absolutely work. You just have to change a couple little things around to make it more inclusive. But the show has actually been casting kind of outside of the box queens since season 1. I would say that Angina, who was a bald queen, was a pretty like groundbreaking thing to do in your first season, because obviously there was a lot of traditional female impersonation on that season, but you also had people like Angina who were high fashion, bald, you know, really utilized hats and headpieces and things like that. Fascinators. You had Nina Flowers, who was kind of an alt queen, who was doing a lot of like high fashion, grungy, weird looks, and it seemed like they were really open to this type of drag. Now, seasons 2 and 3, I think definitely were very focused on female illusion. There wasn't really anyone outside of the box that much in those seasons, but things definitely changed in season 4. And I would consider season 4 the first moment that Drag Race really opened itself up to new things, to trying new things, to casting different types of people. And that all started with Sharon Needles, which obviously it sucks that she is a very shitty person, but we can't have this conversation without talking about Sharon Needles, because she really was out there doing things that no one had done on the show before. And was it the most polished? Absolutely not. Would many of her looks even today hold up? Not really, but she was interesting because it was something new. And it was something that the audience was really just like thirsty for. Someone new who was gonna shake up the formula of pretty queen wins. And they never really tried to change Sharon. I think part of that is because Sharon was able to kind of get out of her alternative horror box a little bit. She, you know, went very pretty for the like girly girl runway early on. She did go a little bit more traditionally feminine at points. So I think they never actually really needed to give her the critique of like, we're tired of the alt, give us something new, because she did, I think, show a lot of levels and layers to what she can do in her drag. But at the same time, we have another queen on this season who I think was really trying new things and pushing the boundaries and kind of towed the line a little bit too far for the judges, and that was Milan. Milan was a very kind of gender fuck performer, you know what I mean? Like, she would constantly rip off her clothes, show her boy chest. She famously wore a Janelle Monáe inspired suit in season 4, episode 5. And the judges were not happy with it because it wasn't tailored to be a womanly suit. She was just wearing a men's suit. And I thought it was genuinely really fierce because she had this very pretty face, but then she had her hair up. It was giving a little bit masculine, and then she has this masculine suit that she's wearing, and it was different and it was fun, but the judges did not live. Now, obviously we know Sharon Needles won this season, and I think it opened the door for queens like Alaska, for queens like Milk in season 6, who came in with these really wacky, weird aesthetics that were also going to continue to push the boundaries. Now, this next section we're going to talk about is kind of 2 queens that were told to change their aesthetic. When they tried to change their aesthetic, they were immediately snipped. And this is a very famous, people talk about this all the time, but Milk on season 6 was really doing different things. She was wearing facial hair in episode 1. She was coming out pregnant. She came out with a huge Pinocchio nose. She dressed as male RuPaul. And at the time, I think the audience was really ready for this kind of boundary breaking drag. You know what I mean? Like, we got a taste of it from queens like Sharon and Alaska, but this was someone who was taking it like 10 steps further, and the audience was eating it up. Of course, there were some people who just wanted the female illusion drag, but I think there was a large portion of the fan base who was living for what Milk was doing, and that is why she became such a huge fan favorite after her season. Now, looking at some of the critiques, obviously I can't show videos because whenever I show even 2 seconds of Drag Race on my channel, it immediately gets copywritten. But we have in episode 1 where Milk is wearing the beard, Santino Rice gives her the critique that hopefully Milk will be able to go more feminine when we ask her to. And this is like an immediate, like, you've only seen an entrance look and this design challenge look, and you're already saying, we're gonna need to like push her more feminine. Like, you haven't even seen the full scope of what she brought or what she's going to do. And he already was like starting that storyline of like, Milk isn't feminine enough for this show. Milk is too weird for this show. And we see this storyline really take form in episode 5, where Milk comes out as male RuPaul for the RuPaul runway. And Michelle kind of likes it. Santino is like, absolutely not. I don't really know what Ru thought. We don't really hear a lot of like Ru's perspective here, probably because the show didn't want to outright have RuPaul saying, no, this is not okay, or this is incredible. I think they were kind of going to be testing the waters with this, so you're getting 2 different sides of Santino and Michelle's opinions. But they specifically ask Milk, why don't you do prettier makeup? Why do you always have to go for something crazy? Why can't you just be pretty? And Milk says that part of her feels like if she did come out as this glamazon, that she would be standing out for all the wrong reasons, that she wouldn't be as pretty as the other queens, and it would probably land her in the bottom. RuPaul is like, I don't care. I want to see you as a glamazon. Just do it. She does it the next episode and immediately is red for filth, put in the bottom, and eliminated. So it's kind of sad because these were her worries. Like, if she veered more feminine, if she went more traditional drag, what the show was asking for, that she would be kind of laughed at and sent home. And that is exactly what happened. And I don't care what people say, you cannot say that Milk deserved to be in the bottom more than Darian Lake for the oh no, she better don't challenge. Like, yes, Milk's runway was not the best, but Darian's performance was abysmal. Absolute worst. But they really wanted to, I think, prove the point that Milk can't do high glam feminine drag well, so she cannot proceed further on the season. That was the storyline that she was given. And I think this was somewhat also given to Max the next season, on season 7, where Michelle was like, hey, I want to see something other than gray hair. And Max is like, this is what I do. Like, that's my stamp. That's my brand, is this like vintagey, but also fashion style with gray hair. And Michelle was like, I don't care. I'm asking for it multiple times. They're not giving to me. Give me a different color hair choice. She wears black hair and she goes home. Now, I think this one is like not like, I think Milk's was definitely like a storyline. Like they purposely put her in the bottom there to send a message. Max was just in the bottom. And unfortunately, I think that if she was maybe in the bottom with Miss Fame, she could have stayed a bit longer. But with Jaden Dewar Fierce in the bottom with her, like there was no hope for Miss Max, unfortunately. But we kind of have a nice contrast where we have Trixie Mattel on season 7 with this crazy makeup. And even Trixie now is like, that was crazy. I don't know what I was thinking. But at the time, I think everyone was on board. Everyone was like, this is cool. I see what she's going for, this kind of elevated Barbie, uncanny valley style. And they never read her for her makeup. She never once got the critique, scale it back, make it more traditional. Like that was something that was never brought up. So when you have someone with this crazy makeup that we've really seen for the first time, because we've seen some outside of the box mugs previously, but this was the first mug that I would say is completely outside of what the show has portrayed in the past. Really pushing the boundaries, really doing something completely different, and she never got read for it. Which I was surprised by when I went back and watched, because I was assuming there would at least be one critique somewhere, but that was not the case. They were kind of just like, this is what she's giving us, and we're going to run with it. We also see on seasons 8 and 9, 2 queens that had some pretty outside of the box makeup and aesthetics. Kimchi and Nina Bonina Brown. Kimchi had this very kind of stylized anime, huge makeup, and was immediately like beloved for it. Like she won the first week. They always loved her makeup. They always loved her outfits. It was never an issue that her makeup was different and kind of weird at the time. You know, it was something that we hadn't seen a lot on the show. Whereas now, if Kimchi comes on, that makeup is iconic and it's something that we have seen other people kind of make their own as well. But at the time, we were like, damn, that's some crazy makeup. It's awesome, but it's definitely standing out as being different. And then Nina Bonina Brown is one of the most original queens that has ever been on this show. You know, all the things that she did with paper and proportions. And I think about that nighttime, that naughty 90s look with like the skeleton and then just the body. I love that look. I love so many of Nina's looks. But Nina also did traditional glam looks a lot. Like she kind of, I would say 50-50 did a crazy face or a traditional face. So the judges saw that versatility and they didn't really need to ask for it. Hi, this is Editing Derek, and I don't know how, but I completely forgot a perfect example of this. Season 8, Acid Betty, one of the most original creators and designers and drag artists we've had on the show. In episode 3, Michelle tells Acid Betty when she's wearing her roller derby look, which she went for this, like, I don't even know, like, evil, crazy derby chick. She says, "It's getting predictable. I'd like to see something way different." And, I mean, let's just show the 3 looks that Acid Betty has worn up to this point. All 3 are so different. The first one is very, like, avant-garde. The second one is very, I think, chic and high fashion. And then this one is more, like, intense and I would say a little bit campier than the other 2. So, like, I mean, what she's saying is, I want to see a pretty drag queen, not these, like, outside-of-the-box crazy concepts. But it just comes off as a little bit misguided, we'll say, when this season is not known for having great runways, and Acid Betty's one of the few queens that were consistently coming out in, like, high concept, outside of the box, very polished looks week after week after week. The first instance of makeup being an issue that I could find, and I could remember off the top of my head, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, was Dusty Ray Bottoms on season 10, episode 1. Now, Dusty, her thing was having dots all over her face. Different colors, different patterns. It was never the same, always different. And on episode 1, Michelle asked her, are we going to see these dots all the time? And Dusty kind of is immediately defensive, and she's like, yes, this is my drag, this is what I do, like, I can do other things, but these dots are what make me, me. And Michelle kind of just is like, well, I'm looking forward to a dot-free face from Dusty. And that was an immediate, like, damn. Like, they don't like it and they don't care that it is her style, that it is her thing, that it is her brand. They're like, get rid of it. And so Dusty does, completely gets rid of it. Now, unfortunately, she doesn't make it a whole lot further. She's the fourth out on this cast. But this was very eye-opening at the time for being like, damn, if they don't like something that someone is doing with their drag, they're straight up just gonna say, don't do this. We don't like it. We don't care, basically. And that was a very eye-opening thing at the time. And I remember a lot of people feeling bad for Dusty because a lot of people liked the dots. Now, there are some people that didn't. But at the end of the day, my argument for this whole thing is you know exactly who you're casting. If someone has something about their drag or their face or their mug, whatever, that you just straight up don't like, maybe just don't cast them. Like, how are you going to be impartial if there's something about this queen that you straight up just hate and it is their drag? Like, the dots are Dusty's drag. So coming in from episode 1 saying, I don't like this, change it, it's kind of like, you knew what she was going to give. Like, you knew that there was going to be dots. So why not either accept it or say, maybe the show isn't for Dusty because we just don't like what she does. Because kind of forcing her to change her drag when this is her time to be branding herself and showing off what she does, a little bit shitty. But honestly, when you go back and watch season 6, Bianca Del Rio was told to blend her makeup, to get rid of the harsh white line under her eyes. But if you look at Bianca now, she's doing the same mug that she was doing when she started on season 6. She did change her mug to appease the judges, but it's not like they taught her like, oh my gosh, this is what I should have been doing all along. I look so beautiful and this is the real me. No, she was like, all right, I'll change it for you, but this is my drag. And once I'm out of this competition, I'm going right back to what I do. And maybe that's the smart thing. You know, it's probably good to not go against what the judges say, but there also has to be some argument for like artistic integrity and not going against your morals and what you really are fighting for with your drag and what you're trying to represent. Now on season 12, we have 2 queens that have some outside of the box makeup. We have Crystal Method and we have Rock'em Sakura. Now in episode 1, Crystal Method she isn't told to her face. This is when they're like deliberating when the queens are away. But Michelle is like, she did that same makeup twice. And she specifically says, I get worried when these kids pigeonhole themselves and do the same thing. Now, people were upset about this because Crystal had multiple different makeups for this episode. She had a red devil look. She came in with a more clown look. She had done things to change her makeup throughout the episode. But if you look at basically everyone else, they're all doing the same version of their like pretty female illusion mug. Gigi Good, same makeup in all 4 looks, but Michelle doesn't care because that's a female illusion face. And that's what they like, and that's what they're looking for. Crystal, who changed her makeup the most out of anyone in this episode, is told that she's pigeonholing herself and doing the same makeup. Luckily, I think Crystal played this perfectly. I think she did what you should do if you're given this critique. Change up the makeup a little bit when the time calls for it. When you're wearing a look that it doesn't make sense. When you're playing Madonna in a challenge, or when you're playing like in an acting challenge where like you're not supposed to be Crystal Method, you're playing someone else, tone it down, make it a bit more digestible for like the main audience, whatever. And then when you're doing crazy Crystal looks, bring it back out. I think that is the perfect thing. And I actually think the critique that, you know, maybe you should have changed your makeup for this challenge is valid when the makeup is completely outside of what you should be giving in the challenge. Like, imagine if Crystal did her standard face for Madonna. It would have been like, you're trying to be Madonna, but you're giving Crystal. Or if she, you know, as Poppy for the Snatch Game, just did her like classic Crystal Method mug, it would have been like, that wasn't Poppy, that was Crystal Method. So I do get the critique when it's for a specific type of challenge that calls for a specific type of face. And I think that Crystal then was perfect. She toned it down when she needed to tone it down. She brought it back when it needed to come back. And they never really had an issue with her makeup again. And Rock'em Sakura, they never really like mentioned her makeup. She also wasn't around for that long. But things definitely changed the following season, in season 13, with Gottmik, who is known for this signature white face. Now, Gottmik, much like Crystal and much like Nina Bonina Brown, was able to kind of shift in and out of this as necessary. Sometimes she would have it for like a signature look that she was wearing, or if it went with her runway. But when she was doing, a regular challenge, playing like a regular person, she would do a regular face. And so they never, critiqued Gottmik for that, because she was able to do her signature, but also bring other things and show versatility. Now we're going to talk quickly, because I've talked about this queen a lot. One of the most frustrating examples of this is Charity Case on UK3. Now, Charity is a huge name in the drag community before they were on Drag Race. I knew about them for years. They do, honestly, like very Dragula style drag. Monsters, always changing their look, always changing their face, never looking the same twice. And that was what they were known for. So that's what Drag Race knew they were going to get when they casted Charity. But it's like when she got there and was giving exactly what she does, they were like, whoa, what is this? Like, what do you think you're doing here? And I'm going to read a quote from Michelle in the episode that Charity went home. Charity is wearing this incredible look for the Expenny Henny look. It's like a tooth fairy, but it's so well constructed. It's so detailed. The makeup is incredible. The prosthetics are, everything is incredible. But Michelle says, what you do is unbelievable. I'm not trying to change who you are. I'm trying to broaden your horizon. Imagine if you had done this with an incredibly beautiful makeup. Show us the other side of Charity. What other side? Like this is what Charity does. It's one thing if like she's known for also doing glam and also doing no, she's giving exactly what her drag is. The problem is it's not aligning with what you want her drag to be. And in an episode where she does pretty good, she takes control after Crystal Versace is a really bad leader. She gets her team through the challenge. They have the better commercial and she is still put in the bottom and sent home. I have a whole video about this where I go like in depth on her journey and how she was so mistreated. I'll put it up here. And then we have, I would say on season 14 of Drag Race, we definitely have a lot of alternative queens like Bosco, like Diabetti, like Willow Pill. And they're really doing things that are really outside of the box, but I wouldn't say things like their makeup are that wild. Like Bosco's eyebrows are a huge thing, but much like Sasha Velour's eyebrows, it's not really brought up or critiqued or told to change. Like, it's just kind of like what she does, and they don't really care. Because they like Bosco, and they liked Sasha Velour. Now, on season 16, we have Dawn, who has a very, I would say, experimental mug. She is known for having, like, elf ears all the time. She's, like, this little fantasy creature. And we don't see her get a ton of critiques about her makeup. They don't really seem to care as much with Dawn as they have with other contestants. But Dawn did have something interesting to say from her perspective on Twitter about all of this Arrietty discussion. She said that Michelle telling me to switch up my mug actually pushed me towards trying something new, which has led to different mugs that I play with now, as well as refining the signature that I was doing before. So I found it to be extremely helpful both on the show and after. That being said, I've always maintained that critiques like this are good only if they're directed at all types of drag, not just telling the unique girls to be boring. Like, let's tell the boring girls to be unique sometimes. And I fully agree with that. And I think that for some people like Dawn, who really didn't need to change a ton, like they weren't asking her to switch up her entire makeup, like I could see how those little critiques could help Dawn. But when you're someone who has like a signature stamp and they're like, stop doing that, I could see how that would be more grating and more upsetting. And that leads us to last episode of Drag Race Season 17, where we see Arrietty, known for this kind of like, Michelle called it like an off-Broadway Cats musical makeup, but to me, it's giving Avatar, it's giving Alien, it's giving like out of this world kind of vibes. And that's very much our Arrietty's drag. Like I feel like the looks that she serves go well with the face that she's wearing. And in the previous episode, where they were meant to be giving these opulent looks, Arrietty changed her makeup to fit the garment better, which I think made perfect sense, and she was positively critiqued for doing so. So in this episode, where she's wearing a look that is futuristic, the kind of look that goes well with this kind of alien mug, Michelle now says that basically she doesn't like it. Is the gist that I got. Michelle does not like this nose, and she thinks that it's going to hold Arrietty back from getting more mainstream opportunities, which very well could be true. But do you really want those opportunities if you're going to have to change your entire aesthetic to get them? Like, there might be opportunities that only you can get because of your aesthetic, that they wouldn't give to someone who's just doing like a pretty, female illusion mug. And, we've seen now two queens on the season, Lucky Stars and Susie Toot, preemptively change their drag to avoid getting this critique. Lucky Stars did it in the Opulence Challenge, and it sent her home. I think that she was kind of screwed in that challenge anyway, because I don't think that they had the materials necessary for her to make the kind of looks that she makes. And I wouldn't say that her drag is super opulent. I think it's very, and I mean this in a good way, crafty and smart, almost like a child's storybook coming to life. How does Lucky meet this challenge and make it fit in what she does? Kind of like how Plasma in the Goth Challenge last year, I was like Plasma going in was like she was already dead when the challenge started. Like how does Plasma fit in her drag into this challenge? I felt the same way about Lucky. But Susie, in the same episode that Arrietty is critiqued for doing the same makeup, Susie changes her entire face to give just very glam female illusion and is praised by Michelle and kind of shaded by Michelle, who says, you do this little Betty Boop thing, but this is beautiful. And it's very much like, I feel like that's what Michelle does a lot, is she'll like overly praise when they do something very, I don't want to say basic, just like what other people are doing, this very standard, pretty drag mug. And when they go for the more like outside of the box mugs, she's like, maybe try something different. But like Dawn said, they will never ask a pretty queen to go ugly. They'll ask a boring queen to give them personality, but they're never going to say, hey, you should do like an alien mug, or you should give us some horror, or you should give us some like filthy. They would never do that, and they never have done that. And that, wherein lies the issue. So I have two of my good friends, Bonnie and Callie Coquette, here to kind of give their thoughts. I have some questions for them about this, and we'll see what they think about this phenomenon on Drag Race.
Hi, Derek. Hello, detectives. My name is Callie Coquette. I was the pork chop queen of season 1 of Drag Duel and a creative makeup diva and extraordinaire.
Hey, my name's Bonnie. I live in Kentucky, and I describe myself as like the resident sort of like girly punk, which is kind of like girly pop, but make it a little edgy, make it a little alternative. Clown.
What do you think of Michelle's critiques for Arrietty and for Susie in this past episode?
I'm over them. I understand the idea behind wanting queens to be versatile on the show and show that they're talented makeup artists, but it is exhausting when it is only the alternative queens and the queens that have like a more branded face doing their own signature mug, getting that critique over and over again. Meanwhile, there's 50 ravens on the stage.
I was a little bit conflicted on it. As somebody who does have unique makeup and would like to eventually be on Drag Race at some point in my life, it's, I think, a fear that every single person with unique makeup has, or somebody who really focuses on their face, is being told to change things up when it's something that's very signature to you. I do think that there is a certain strength in being able to do a lot of different things with your makeup. For example, I can do something besides this face. I can do glamorous beauty mugs and other stuff like that. It's just not something that I choose to do because this is the thing that I like the most. I feel like the best point for that critique would have been in terms of the challenge as opposed to the runway, because I feel like the runway is really a chance for you to get to sell yourself and your brand and what you do, versus challenges, I feel like there's a little bit more room for leeway.
How do you feel like Drag Race is with their inclusivity at this point in the show?
It feels like they're trying to say that they're trying. Not because they actually want to make any actual change, but I think they got tired of being called out. And so like, no, we're trying, guys. We're trying. I promise we're trying. Yeah, we have trans women on the show now, and we have trans men on the show now too. But where are my kings? Where are the different types and styles of drag?
The main point of Drag Race has gotten away from a lot of people, which is to show very diverse people and different cultures and backgrounds and try to share as many stories as possible that we don't always get to hear. Of course, there's always room for more inclusion, drag kings, drag things, people with more unique makeup, all of that falls under that umbrella. I think Drag Race is very diverse when it comes to the people outside of drag. When it comes to just drag in general, I do feel like there is a more narrow scope because it is RuPaul's Drag Race. So RuPaul and the judges that are on the panel are always going to have a certain criteria and a certain look that they want, even if they don't necessarily think that's the case. Everybody has an implicit bias.
How do you feel like drag that you see on Drag Race affects drag in the real world?
I would say the biggest influence one is the songs that people want to see be done. They all want to see the shut up and drive alter ego of it all. But I would also say in the expectations the audience has of the performers, they are expecting these high-end custom couture outfits, and they're expecting new outfits every single time, and that is simply not the case. I am wearing 2 cut-up flannels from the Goodwill with some studs and safety pins. I'm not coming out here and custom couture. It's just not my thing. Also, I'm just broke.
If you were on the show and Michelle was like, Bonnie, I just want to see you look like a pretty girl next week, how would that make you feel?
Well, I've been told that before. So I mean, I'm used to it. The Kentucky scene, there's small pools of niche alternative shows, but by and far the large majority of drag that is wanted and booked here is very pageant, pretty polished drag, which is not me. But so I understand the critique of wanting to see people be pretty. It's a nice little gag for the TV show. It's a whole moment of, oh my God, can she do it? Can she do it? And if she does it well, then you're praised for it. But 9 times out of 10, you're not praised for it. You're sent home.
You're giving Derek Barry eyebrows.
Correct.
I don't think it would. Well, it depends on what they say. If Michelle told me that I looked like I was in a production of Cats, I might be a little offended. But if it was just, we want to see a different side of your makeup, we want to see you switch it up, I can understand that, especially if you've only shown this one lane of what you do. I think if you are a makeup-centric queen or performer, you need to have the ability to show more than one type of face if you're going to market yourself that way. I think showing variety when you are known for your makeup is a very key element. And if you are unable to show that, it sort of just says that you found the one specific way to paint your face, and that's sort of the only way you really know how to do makeup. And I do think that it should be applied to more entertainers across the board on Drag Race. I feel like a lot of the pretty girls, we sort of had that storyline with Marsha in season 15 of needing to amp it up and show a different side of your drag that is more creative and more colorful and more drag. But in general, I feel like the more creative queens often have to dampen themselves down versus other more generic queens like Lucy LaDuca. I'm kidding. Other more generic queens, for lack of a better word, don't really need to bring themselves up to that creative level as often.
So where do you think that line is when they're asking for versatility, when they're asking you to change it up? Where is it too far where it's I'm not even doing drag I would do in real life ever?
I guess at the end of the day, it is how much you want to stick with your artistic integrity versus how much you want to win this competition. I feel like the line is different for everybody in terms of how far they are willing to go to change their art form, because drag at the end of the day is so personal to each individual person. it all depends on how far you are willing to go. For me, I know that I can do more traditional pretty drag makeup, and I would still feel like myself to a certain extent, but I would not go out with like bare face and not that much blush or contour and just be a really pretty woman, because out of drag I am a little more feminine, and I would just feel like Cat walking onto the stage versus Callie Coquette. And I feel like for queens who have really big exaggerated makeup, part of their transformation and confidence when they want to go onto the stage is in having that face and sort of being that recognizable brand. I feel like a lot of people harp on the judges for their makeup critiques, but they have helped quite a few queens in the past develop their face and expand their brand so much further. Look at Crystal Method as a perfect example. When she first started on Drag Race, her makeup was fabulous and creative and fun, but when she did the Squirrel Scouts in the World's Worst episode and had the exact same face versus Rock'em Sakura, who's able to switch up her makeup and become a little softer but still be recognizable as Rock, it, I think, perfectly encapsulates the core of this issue, where when it comes to playing a character and not playing your drag persona, there is a certain amount of flexibility that you need as an entertainer when you are playing a character to be able to fully transform and find that line between being yourself but also being that character. And Michelle, especially talking to Crystal week by week about changing her makeup, and even Heidi in Closet as well. She's an example of somebody who has a more traditional drag face, who, like, Heidi isn't necessarily known to be a makeup queen, and yet her and Crystal were both able to transform and really hone in on what exactly their perfect branded mug is. And now Heidi's gorgeous, Crystal is gorgeous as well, and they both went down different paths, but they both got the same critique on the same season, and were both able to grow from it so much.
Where would you like to see Drag Race go with inclusivity and with the types of people that they are casting and how they treat the people that they then cast in the future?
I think, like, you see the bitches that are applying. You cast them knowing the makeup that they do. So then why is it a problem on week 3 when they show up? Like, and also, just specifically about the critique that Arrietty got, was that she looks like she's from Cats. Like, you did not need to go that far, Diva. Like, the simple, like, it's getting repetitive, change it up, you would look prettier the other way. But actually, let me back up, because last week, she got complimented on switching it up. So I do not understand why this critique was brought up now, other than just to justify her low placement.
And to potentially make a girl who's already very pressed even more pressed.
Correct. They want that drama. They said, we're losing Joella. Someone else has to be the diva. But in terms of, like, where I want to see the show go, I want the show to look more like the shows that I'm part of. Like tonight, I just got back from a gig, and there was such a plethora of different styles of artists. I wasn't the only alternative artist there. Anybody can do drag. Drag is just performance art. I wouldn't even say at this point, to me, it's gender art, because sincerely, what gender is this? Like, what gender am I serving? I do think that it is in part due to Drag Race being more mainstream now, and the pretty pageant polished drag is more palatable to a general audience, and getting people who don't really know what drag is, especially in the current political climate, to be introduced to it in a way that I don't want to say is sanitized, but in a way it is sanitized on the show.
Thank you so much again to both Bonnie and Callie for jumping in and answering my questions and giving their thoughts. It's very much appreciated. And I think it's adding a lot to this video to get the perspective of someone who is, if they were on the show, would be getting these critiques. Like, absolutely. So you've heard my thoughts. You've heard their thoughts. I want to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below if you feel like Michelle or Ru or any of the judges have taken it too far, if you think that this needs to end, if you think that there is some merit behind it. Let's have a conversation. Also, if you are not already, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. We are very close to 80K. And make sure you're listening to The Rigged Recap, where me and Kayla Says talk about every episode of Drag Race Season 17. We just had an episode come out with Runner Eye, and of course it was very chaotic and iconic. And we have some very fun guests lined up for the rest of the season as well. So go listen to that. The links to all of my social medias are linked in the description down below. Make sure you're following my stories on Instagram, where you can vote in polls every single week on the season 17 looks and challenge performances, and we'll see who gets the most points at the end of the season. Also, check me out on Blue Sky. Get off Twitter. You should for sure leave Twitter. Like, everyone should be leaving Twitter in droves and heading over to Blue Sky. But with that, that is the end of today's video. Again, thank you to Callie Coquette and Bonnie, and I will catch you all in the next one.